Casey, are you there?
Yeah, if you just look a little bit to your left.
Shit!
Hi. Yes. Hi.
Hi. That's that thing on my leg. It's your foot.
Yes, I'm sitting right here. Hi.
Hi, honey.
Hi. How you doing?
I'm pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have a good day today?
Oh, yeah, pretty good. You know, we all went and swam in the pool. It was freezing as fuck, but, you know.
It was. The pool was really cold today.
Yeah.
This is recorded on Sunday, by the way, for those of you who are listening on Tuesday or whatever day. Yeah,
Tuesday. That's our daily Bible podcast day.
Well, no, I meant Tuesday or, it stays on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
So somebody could watch it any other day. So anyway, this is the Sunday before we recorded it.
There you go. So, you guys ready for your quick Bible study for today? It's completely accurate. We're going over some more Samuel shit, and it's more of David. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, hope you guys are ready for this.
I'm holding my butt and drinking my tea.
Okay.
Which is complicated with only two hands.
So Joab asked David, "What the fuck? Why are you mourning, bro? Grow a fucking pair." And then people are confused because there's switcheroos going on with the kings and nobody knows who's in charge. They're all running around fucking cats and dogs in wigs. If you're in the Skeptic Mafia, you would know that reference. So then David decides to go back to Jerusalem and to clear shit up. Sorry, I was reading my own handwriting.
Yeah, the engineer can't read his own handwriting. Imagine that.
And then some fuck named Shimei meets David at the Jordan and then immediately goes face down, ass up, offering all of his holes as an apology for sucking that Absolam dick.
Oh, boy.
And then Methbeth also meets him at the Jordan to score some really nice blue crystal shit, right? He looked, just imagine this, a guy on a 2-year meth bender. That's what Methbeth looked like.
Oh.
With a name like Methbeth, you gotta figure, he's pretty much sucking Heisenberg dick.
His name was not Methbeth.
I disagree.
Okay.
So, and then another strange fuck named Barry came down to meet David, but he was old as fuck, and he just wanted to die at home. So he ended up sending, you'll never guess who he ended up sending, honey.
Who?
Ken Ham.
Oh. Ken
Ham is that old, so when you ask him, were you there, he'll just say, yes, fucker, I was. So he sends Ken Ham in his stead because, Barry just wanted to go home and die, apparently. And then a demon warrior named Sheeva told David to fuck off. Sheeva.
Oh.
Then Israel...
I only correct because there actually is a Sheeva later on in the story.
Well, this is the demon warrior Sheeva.
Oh, okay. My bad.
Israel then decided to follow this demon warrior because of his sick violin skills. And Judah's men pussied out on that particular endeavor and stayed with David. David then put his previous concubines in a house and kept them imprisoned there till they died. He then scored new tale, 20 in all. Joab was too cocky, so he got... Oh, okay, yeah, so for David, Joab was too cocky, so he got someone named Massa. Honestly, it sounds a little bit like a racial joke. Massa and Joab got pissed because Massa got the army, leading skills. Joab only knows how to solve shit with violence, so he kills Massa in a hate crime, and he killed that little bitch with a gat. And then a woman was being really pissy in some town that apparently the demon warrior Sheeva was in. So Joab is like, hey, give us that demon warrior. And she's like, fine. And she throws his head over the wall. The end.
That was painful.
Painful? It was accurate.
No. No.
That was all completely accurate. I don't know what you're talking about.
No, that was terrible.
What? What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? So today we're going to be going over my Bible stuff, and of course, I am not good with the Bible.
Actually, you're really good with the Bible. Different parts of the Bible.
Different parts. We get to the New Testament, I'll be better, I promise.
Oh, yeah. When you get to the New Testament, we're going to have to switch chairs. Because you make me look like a fool when it comes to the New Testament.
Oh, do I?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, especially the Gospels. You know the Gospels really, really well.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, we're going to talk some about 2 Samuel. We're going to start in chapter 19. We actually started 19 last time, and last time where we ended was where David was mourning for Absolam, because if you remember, Joab killed Absolam, javelins, 3 javelins in his heart.
Yep.
And then
he shafted him 3 times.
Yeah, and then
really
10
deep.
of his guys, he was already dead, but 10 of his guys fucking beat him up after that. 10 of Joab's guys. And then they threw him in a pit, right? In the forest.
So just imagine a prison yard, and then Joab stabbed him with, javelins 3 times, and then his boys came up with shivs and shivved him a bunch, and then they tossed him into a well in the prison yard.
That's not how that went. This is not your time right now.
Fuck. Sorry.
So that's where we ended off. David had just found out that Absolam had been killed. And he was mourning, crying, "Oh, my son, Absolam, oh, Absolam, my son, my son." So that's where we ended. That was the very beginning of 2 Samuel 19. So we're going to continue on. You ready?
Mm-hmm. I'm good to go.
So then Joab went into the house of the king and said, "Today you have humiliated all of your men who just saved your life and the lives of your sons and daughters and the lives of your wives and concubines. You love those who hate you and hate those who love you." And he says that because he's crying over Absalom. So he's saying, you love those who hate you. Absalom had taken over the kingdom and made David flee. And so Joab's kind of pissed about it. So Joab continues, "I see that you would be pleased if Absalom were alive today and all of us were dead. Now go out and encourage your men. I swear by the Lord that if you don't go out, not a man will be left with you by nightfall. This will be worse for you than all the calamities that have come upon you from your youth until now." So the king got up and took his seat in the gateway. When the men were told the king is sitting in the gateway, they all came before him. Meanwhile, the Israelites fled to their homes. Okay, so throughout the tribes of Israel, the people were all arguing with each other, saying, "The king has delivered us from the hand of our enemies. He is the one who rescued us from the hand of the Philistines. But now he has fled to the country because of Absalom. And Absalom, whom we anointed to rule over us, has died in battle. So why do you say nothing about bringing the king back?" So the kingdom is kind of super confused about what's going on, because some people were all behind Absalom. Mm-hmm. As the king. They anointed him. Israel anointed him as king. And so their king just died. But the king that was the king right before them that fled and left them, they didn't know if he was going to be king again or really what was going on. So there was a little bit of confusion here.
But nobody's asking if David, being the bitch that he was and running away, should he still be king?
Well, he left because he knew Absalom would come there and kill him.
Well, yeah, I know. I was just kind of making a joke, like, stand your ground,
Yeah.
Whoop your boy's ass, something like that.
So, because of all of this confusion, King David sent a message to Zadok and Abiathar, the priests. Okay, so these were the ones that were in Jerusalem still.
Right.
So he says, "Ask the elders of Judah, why should you be the last to bring the king back to his palace, since what is being said throughout Israel has reached the king at his quarters? You are my brothers, my flesh and blood, so why should you be the last to bring back the king? And say to Amasa, are you not my own flesh and blood? May God deal with me, be ever so severely from now on, if you are not the commander of my army in place of Joab." So the king was kind of pissed at Joab because of how he talked to him after Absalom died. So he replaced him with Amasa. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I can understand why Joab would be pretty pissed.
Well, yeah, so Joab obviously was going to be upset about that.
It's like, listen, man, I'm just trying to spit some truth at you, and you go and replace me? Well, fuck this!
Well, especially because Joab had faithfully served King David for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And so to be replaced after he was trying to get the king to see, hey, you can't sit here and mourn. The guy, yes, he's your son, but the guy who ran you out of Jerusalem and took your seat as king is dead. We defeated him. This is a good thing, right? So, I mean, he's trying to help, but basically he just gets kicked because, I mean, he didn't get totally kicked out of everything.
Right.
It's just he replaced him as the head guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
I whenever you read that, though, about how he talked to David, all I hear is, grow some fucking balls, man. Quit being a little bitch.
So, Joab, it says he won over the hearts of the men of Judah as though they were one man. They sent word to the king, return, you and all your men. Mm-hmm. Okay. So the king returned and went as far as the Jordan. And this is the Jordan River.
Right.
Right. So the men of Judah had come to Gilgal to go out and meet the king and bring him across the Jordan. Shimei, son of Gera, the Benjamite from Bahurim, hurried down with the men of Judah to meet King David. With him were 1,000 Benjamites, along with Ziba, the steward of Saul's household, and his 15 sons and 20 servants. They rushed to the Jordan where the king was. They crossed at the ford to take the king's household over and to do whatever he wished. When Shimei, son of Gera, crossed the Jordan, he fell prostrate before the king and said to him, "May my lord not hold me guilty. Do not remember how your servant did wrong on the day my lord the king left Jerusalem. May the king put it out of his mind, for I your servant know that I have sinned. But today I have come here as the first of the whole house of Joseph to come down and meet my lord the king." Then Abishai, son of Zeruiah, said, "Shouldn't Shimei be put to death for this? He cursed the Lord's anointed." David replied, "What do you and I have in common, you sons of Zeruiah? This day you have become my adversaries. Should anyone be put to death in Israel today? Do I not know that today I am king over Israel?" So the king said to Shimei, "You shall not die," and the king promised him on oath. Okay, so he's not going to kill Shimei for cursing him.
Well, yeah, but, I mean, that whole lead up to it, it was like, you know, I mean, did he set himself apart from them? Like, who the fuck are you? Like, I feel like that's what he said. Maybe I'm just not understanding, like, his speech or something, but it just seems like he's like, who the fuck are you? We're different fucking people, but it's fine. You're cool.
I mean... Kind of. He just forgave him.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I guess it's a key component to, I guess, even Old Testament theology, like the whole idea of forgiveness, because God constantly forgives the Jewish people, or the Israelites.
Well, and so this guy was really upset because he went with Absolam, obviously, and cursed King David for leaving, and so now David's back, so he's got to, figure out a way to not get killed.
Yeah.
So he's not going to kill him. So also at the Jordan, Mephibosheth, not Methbeth.
Methbeth.
Mephibosheth, Saul's grandson, also went down to meet the king. He had not taken care of his feet, or trimmed his mustache, or washed his clothes from the day the king left until the day he returned safely. So this asshole must have stunk bad.
Can you imagine the fucking talons on them feet?
No.
Like, he walks through and it's like, God damn, what are you, a fucking vulture? It's like, I could imagine him, like, flying down and, like, grabbing David up by his talons. And
I was going to say a velociraptor. You remember, like, in that one scene in Jurassic Park with the tapping of the talon?
Yeah.
That shit was funny. Actually, it was a claw. It wasn't a talon, technically, I guess, right? So, when Mephibosheth came down from Jerusalem to meet the king asked him, "Why didn't you go with me, Mephibosheth?" He said, "My lord the king, since I, your servant, am lame, I said, I will have my donkey saddled and I will ride on it so I can go with the king. But Ziba, my servant, betrayed me, and he has slandered your servant to my lord the king. My lord the king is like an angel of God, so do whatever pleases you. All of my grandfather's descendants deserved nothing but death from my lord the king. But you gave your servant a place among those who eat at your table. So what right do I have to make any more appeals to the king? And the king said to him, why say more? I order you and Ziba to divide the fields. Mephibosheth said to the king, let him take everything. Now my lord the king has arrived home safely. So he forgave Mephibosheth for not going. But it really wasn't Mephibosheth's fault. His servant, fucked it up and he couldn't go because he couldn't walk.
Because of his talons?
No, he said he's lame.
Oh, okay.
So he had something wrong with him to where either he couldn't walk or he couldn't walk long distances or some other thing. I'm not sure exactly what was wrong with him. He's lame.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So now we've met Shimei, Mephibosheth, and next up, Barzillai.
Brazilian wax.
No.
What?
The Gileadite also came down from Rogelim to cross the Jordan with the king and to send him on his way from there. Now, Barzillai was a very old man, 80 years of age. He had provided for the king during his stay in Mahanaim, for he was a very wealthy man. The king said to him, cross over with me and stay with me in Jerusalem, and I will provide for you there. But Barzillai answered the king, how many more years will I live? And I should go up to Jerusalem with the king? I am now 80 years old. Can I tell the difference between what is good and what is not? Can your servant taste what he eats and drinks? Can I still hear the voices of men and women singers? Why should your servant be an added burden to my lord the king? Your servant will cross over the Jordan with the king for a short distance. But why should the king reward me in this way? Let your servant return, that I may die in my own town near the tomb of my father and mother. But here is your servant Kimham, not Kenham, Kinham, and let him cross over with my lord the king. Do for him whatever pleases you. The king said, Kimham shall cross over with me, and I will do for him whatever pleases you, and anything you desire from me I will do for you. So all the people crossed the Jordan, and then the king crossed over. The king kissed Barzillai and gave him his blessing, and he returned to his home.
See, I would have just called him Barry.
Okay. When the king crossed over to Gilgal, Kimham crossed with him, and all the troops of Judah and half the troops of Israel had taken the king over. Okay. So, soon all of the men of Israel were coming to the king and saying to him, why did our brothers, the men of Judah, steal the king away and bring him and his household across the Jordan together with all of his men? All the men of Judah answered the men of Israel, we did this because the king is closely related to us. Why are you angry about it? Have we eaten any of the king's provisions? Have we taken anything from ourselves, or for ourselves? Then the men of Israel answered the men of Judah, we have 10 shares in the king, and besides, we have greater claim on David than you have. So why do you treat us with contempt? Were we not the first to speak of bringing back our king? But the men of Judah responded even more harshly than the men of Israel. So they're basically just bitching back and forth at each other. They're mad at each other. David's ours. No, David's ours. What are you doing? He's our king. He's our king. It's really ridiculous. So anyway, a troublemaker named Sheeva, son of Bichri, a Benjamite, happened to be there, and he sounded the trumpet and shouted, we have no share in David, no part in Jesse's son. Every man to his tent, O Israel. So all the men of Israel deserted David to follow Sheeva, but the men of Judah stayed behind with their king and took him all the way from the Jordan to Jerusalem. So now Sheeva has decided that he's gonna, take the men of Israel away from David, and now they're following him. So
the demon warrior,
Sheba, yeah, okay, not Shiva, Sheba. Okay. So when David returned to his palace in Jerusalem, he took the 10 concubines. Remember the ones he left?
yes.
to take care of the palace. And then when Absalom took over, he fucked all 10 of them on the roof in a tent.
Oh yes, in that marathon sex session that they had.
Yeah. So now David has to do something with those concubines, right?
Not fuck them.
So he took the 10 concubines he had left to take care of the palace and put them in a house under guard. He provided for them, but he did not lie with them. They were kept in confinement until the day of their death, living as widows.
What does that sound like to you?
Imprisonment?
Yes. Exactly what I said in my opening.
Yeah.
Proving that I'm 100% accurate in what I say at the beginning of these episodes.
No, honey, no.
And I don't know why he was like, yeah, sure, I'll imprison them in a house. Like, I don't know why that's the thing. Why not just release them back into the wild? Like, why does he have to, like, sequester them for the rest of their lives?
Well, perhaps. I mean, I don't know this for sure. Perhaps it could be. Well, see, I don't know. He left 10 behind. I don't know if any of the ones he left behind had children of his. So perhaps he kept them because his children they had his children and they still needed to care for their children. I don't know. I'm not really sure, but he did keep them in confinement and they lived as widows. So I don't know. I don't know what they had access to or not. But definitely he should not have done this, and yet he did.
And God's fine with it, by the way. God's fine with him having 10 concubines on top of his 7 wives.
Well, and the concubines he took with him.
Yeah, and the concubines, because you know that he didn't take pussy with him. I mean, he definitely, like, that was one thing, like, when he was packing up to leave his shit behind, it's like, all right, do I got my other 15 concubines? Okay, good, because I want something to do while I'm out there in the cave.
It's true. I mean, cave dwelling is probably not exciting.
No, probably not. It's also probably not a good place to get fucked by your sweaty, like, I don't know, rapist.
No, I mean, probably not. So that they randomly address that in Samuel chapter 20, this is the beginning of Samuel chapter 20. Yeah, so that's kind of a weird thing. Anyway, the king said to Amasa, "Summon the men of Judah to come to me within 3 days, and be here yourself." So he was calling all of the men of Judah back, and be here yourself. But when Amasa went to summon Judah, he took longer than the time the king had set for him. David said to Abishai, "Now Sheeva will do us more harm than Absolam did. Take your master's men and pursue him, or he will find fortified cities and escape from us." So Joab's men and the Kerethites and Pelethites and all the mighty warriors went out under the command of Abishai. They marched out from Jerusalem to pursue Sheeva. When they were at the great rock in Gibeon, Amasa came to meet them. Joab was wearing his military tunic, and strapped over at his waist was a belt with a dagger in its sheath. As he stepped forward, it dropped out of its sheath. Joab said to Amasa, "How are you, my brother?" Then Joab took Amasa by the beard with his right hand to kiss him. This is a very interesting way to do it. Mm-hmm. And Amasa was not on his guard against the dagger in Joab's hand, and Joab plunged it into his belly, and his intestines spilled out on the ground. Without being stabbed again, Amasa died. Then Joab and his brother Abishai pursued Sheeva.
Wow.
Yeah, so he gutted him right there on the fucking road.
Jesus Christ. I don't understand why they've got to be so graphic about it. Like, oh, he slit him open and his intestines spilled out and he shit himself a little bit.
Yeah, it's weird, right? I mean, it is the Bible.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so they left him right there on the road. One of Joab's men stood beside Amasa and said, "Whoever favors Joab and whoever is for David, let him follow Joab." Basically like, this fuck will kill you if you fuck with him, right? Mm-hmm. So Amasa lay wallowing in his blood in the middle of the road, and the man saw all the troops came to a halt there. When he realized that everyone who came to Amasa stopped, he dragged him from the road into a field and threw a garment over him. After Amasa had been removed from the road, all the men went on with Joab to pursue Sheeva. Mm-hmm. So it's like out of sight, out of mind.
Wow.
Yes.
I mean, it's great how all the here's one thing that I love, right?
Mm-hmm.
How all of these Christians and everything, they talk about being pro-life and how life is precious and everything like that. But then you read stories like this.
Yeah.
Where Joab fucking guts a guy and then just tosses him off the side of the road.
Yeah, and it's just fine. There's nothing in here that talks about how this is a problem.
No, and I mean, it hasn't been a problem. The entire Old Testament, killing motherfuckers has never been a problem.
Well, a lot of the Christians will use the apologetic that the Old Testament story, like the Old Testament stories, are historical things, and they don't represent. Well, they'll say that they're stories, but they're not teaching, and they don't represent them because Jesus. So Jesus brought the new word, but I mean, even Jesus says.
Well, I don't know about that because the main themes of the Old Testament are still very much useful to Christians. Yeah,
I agree with you, but they say that the Old Testament doesn't matter, that it's Jesus and the New Testament is what they followed. They followed Jesus, not the Old Testament. But I mean, they're really high up on the fucking 10 Commandments, which are in the Old Testament, and not all of them believe in the creation, the Yahweh creation myth,
mm-hmm.
but many of them do, and so that's in the Old Testament. So Moses is in the Old Testament, so they do hold on to a lot of Old Testament stuff. But then when it's convenient.
So if I can phrase this,
yeah,
when the cherry looks ripe, they pick it.
Yes. And then if it's rotted, they throw it out.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, maybe we can get into this a little bit more some other time in a different podcast, but like, if God is supposed to be like the same in the past, present, and future, mm-hmm. like he's unchanging, he right. never changes, then you would think that he would be okay with mass murder now as long as it's done in his name.
Yeah, it's really interesting how they don't, there is no logic that you can follow through the whole narrative.
It's kind of like finding that unifying theory of gravity and everything, like the unifying theory of science and everything that's supposed to like marry all the different portions of science together.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that, but for the Bible. It's like you can't find one single line of logic in there. I'm sure it may exist, but it's a tough motherfucker to find.
I don't disagrry with that. Okay, so are you ready we're going to find out what happens to Sheeva?
Yes.
Okay, so Sheeva, because Joab's troops are coming after him. So Sheeva passed through all the tribes of Israel to Abel-Beth-Maachah, and through the entire region of the Berites who gathered together and followed him. All the troops of Joab came and besieged Sheeva in Abel-Beth-Maachah, and they built a siege ramp up to the city, and it stood against the outer fortifications. While they were battering the wall to bring it down, a wise woman called from the city, "Listen, listen, tell Joab to come here so I can speak to him." He went towards her and she asked, "Are you Joab?" "I am," he answered. She said, "Listen to what your servant has to say." "I'm listening," he said. She continued, "Long ago they used to say, 'Get your answer at Abel,' and that settled it. We are the peaceful and faithful in Israel. You are trying to destroy a city that is a mother in Israel. Why do you want to swallow up the Lord's inheritance?" "Far be it from me," Joab replied. "Far be it from me to swallow up or destroy. This is not the case. A man named Sheeba, son of Bichri from the hill country of Ephraim, has lifted up his hands against the king, against David. Hand over this one man, and I'll withdraw from the city." The woman said to Joab, "His head will be thrown to you from the wall."
Whoa, hold on a second. Like, all Joab was asking for is like, "Hey, could you hand this guy over?"
Yes.
And she's like, "I'll do you one better. I'll cut off his own fucking head with a fucking spoon.
And throw it at you.
And throw it at your feet." And it's like, God damn, woman. Holy fuck, you could just send him out the front gate. She's like, nah, not good enough. We're fucking serious in this goddamn town. You understand me? I'm cutting his head off and throwing it at you.
Well, which is hilarious because just a few lines ago, she says, "We are the peaceful and faithful in Israel, but I will cut this motherfucker's head off and hand it to you." So,
in what universe is it peaceful to cut a motherfucker's head off? How do you just naturally flow into that? It's like, okay, I'll cut his head off. I mean, we're peaceful though.
Well, so I guess if you have to cut one man's head off to keep peace, Instead of letting, the two groups fight each other, you're basically sacrificing the one man for peace. So I guess...
Well, I mean, it's peace, but it's kind of like peace asterisk.
Except for this one guy who got his head fucking cut off.
I mean, you definitely need an asterisk after that peace.
Yeah. So the woman went to all of the people with her wise advice, and they cut off the head of Sheeva and threw it to Joab. So he sounded the trumpet, and all the men dispersed from the city, each returning to his home, and Joab went back to the king in Jerusalem.
I mean, can you imagine it? Joab's like, okay, she just said he was going to throw her head and then throw his head out here. It's like he's turning around talking to his boys or whatnot, and then all of a sudden, fucking Sheba's head like hits him in the back of the head. It's like, God damn it, that hurt.
So, and then here at the end of Samuel chapter 20, they go through the government officials. I guess they're just reaffirming who is in charge of the armies at this time. So Joab ends up being over the entire army, right? Because he killed Amasa. So Joab's over the entire army. Then you've got Benaiah, was over the Kerethites and Pelethites. Adoniram was in charge of forced labor. Mm-hmm.
Well, I just have to ask, like, how uncomfortable was that conversation with David after Joab got back?
Oh, you put that guy in charge. I killed him.
Yeah. It's like, where's Massa at? Oh, I fucking slaughtered him and threw him away like he was nothing.
And anybody else that you replace me with, I'll do the same. So you might as well just leave me be.
And then David's like,
Ooh.
Okay.
You
Point taken. You have the job.
So I think this is interesting because it's just this kind of brushed over. This guy. So in Hebrew, the name is Adoram. Okay. In some Septuagint manuscripts, it's Adoniram. It's a weird name. Anyway, he was in charge of forced labor.
Wait a second.
Uh-huh.
He was in charge of forced labor.
Yes.
So slavery.
Yes. He was in charge of all the slaves.
How can you call it? Oh, God. I'm just thinking about the different debates that have been happening somewhat recently over whether or not, like, the Bible promotes slavery. How can you have...
You had a dude in charge of the slaves.
Yeah, forced labor.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have a choice in that shit.
No.
Like, there's no choice.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
So then we have Jehoshaphat, who was the son of Ahilud, and he was the recorder, so he was the secretary. Then Sheeva was the secretary. I don't know what the fuck a recorder is. Historian, I guess, maybe?
Yeah, probably.
And then Sheeva, not to be confused with Sheba, which I told you not to call this person Sheeva in the beginning part for a reason.
One was a demon warrior. This one's a secretary.
Oh, okay. Well, so I guess that would be a difference. Although I will tell you this, the secretaries usually know everything.
Yeah, they do.
Also, Zadok and Abiathar were the priests, and Ira, the Jerite, was David's priest. So they just kind of go through some of the government officials at that time because they were having to reestablish, right?
Right.
So we're reestablished. And that's the end of today's.
Oh, yes. That's the end of today. What are we going over next time?
Yeah, actually, that is the end. And it took us a while. It took us a month to get there, but that's actually the end of the Absalom's rebellion story.
Oh, okay.
So next week, we're going to start talking about a couple of major calamities that happen in Israel during David's reign. Okay?
Okay.
Historically speaking, it's not clear whether either of these things actually ever occurred in history. But there is a famine, and then there is a death-causing pestilence brought on by David by a decision that David makes. We're going to talk about those. That's the next major story. We're going to talk about the plague next time. We're going to talk about David's going to go through and count his soldiers, right? Because now we've got to reset up everything. We're going to bury bones and count soldiers and everything else. And then there's going to be a plague, and David is going to build an altar. And what's interesting is we're getting ready to build the temple.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which is going to be good.
Yeah. So that's going to be it for us today. I hope that you guys will consider joining the Skeptic Mafia and listening to that awesome podcast we have up for the Skeptic Mafia members.
Yeah, we talk about a dude masturbating into a wig.
Oh, yes. Also, a Catholic school principal gets caught at a strip club in an uncompromising way.
On a school trip.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we talk about all that. Also, Legos.
With boobs.
Yeah, boob Legos. So, hit that join link if you want to join and listen to the awesome podcast. You also get those emojis, and you get some control over the live streams that we have.
You get to vote.
Yeah, you do. And I guess that we'll be seeing you heathens later.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, guys. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice.
Bye, heathens.
Bye, y'all.